Hello and welcome to another weekly update. I hope you're doing well. Some interesting things happened this week, so let's get into it. This is also, by the way, as you probably know, I hope you know, it's the start of a new quarter, start of a new month, and that means there's another update post from Microsoft about everything that's been going on with Microsoft Teams. We're going to talk about that, but I want to talk about some other things first that are sort of related to it. All right, so first thing. Device permissions for Teams apps. Let's talk about that for a minute because this is an interesting subject. And I did a blog post about this yesterday. And the reason for doing the blog post is this information has been around for a little while, but it's been in preview. So we've not really been sure if that's how it's going to stay or whether it's going to change slightly or what's going to happen with it. But now we do know it's come out of come out of preview and it's now in general availability. So that's good. So what is it? So it's about permissions, but not the kind of permissions you think. It's not graph permissions or API permissions. It's to do with device permissions. So things like camera, using your microphone, using your camera, using your location, things like that. Okay, so if you're writing apps that do any of those things, there's the special SDK calls you can make. And if you're running in the Teams client, then Teams will prompt and say, hey, this app's trying to use your microphone. Is that okay? This app is trying to, get your location. Is that okay? All of that doesn't change. This is specifically about what happens when those same apps run in a web browser. Because, of course, you can run Teams in a web browser and you can run Teams apps in a web browser. So what happens there? Up until now, the browser has been in charge of making those decisions, and it's been the browser that has prompted to say, this website would like to use camera. It just in the same way that any WebRTC request would, or any kind of other web app would access the camera, and the browser would step in and do that prompt. This is changing. Because if you think about how apps work in Teams, they're still within Teams, still running inside Teams, and Teams has probably already prompted the user for their webcam, their microphone, and technically probably doesn't need to do so again. So actually, the way this is working is that Teams now is taking on the role of granting app permissions to your app, not the web browser. And that means that as a developer, you need to do some extra things. And that's what this blog post is all about. So if that is you, so if you have an application that makes device permissions such as camera, microphone, location, and I'm going to stop there actually because you don't know whether or not your application is going to run in a browser or not because it's not up to you. It's down to users, and users will use Teams wherever they can. Teams runs on the desktop, it runs in browsers, it runs on mobile clients. So if you have a Teams app, you have to assume that users may use it in any of those places. So there is work for you to do here as a developer. I'm going to share my screen. So it's slightly odd the way this works. So first of all, there's some manifest stuff to make sure that Teams knows that your app asks these permissions. But then Teams is not going to prompt the user. Okay, your app is not going to have the permission until the user specifically, as an explicit action, goes and grants permission. And the way that's done is by, I don't know if you can see this. Let me zoom in a little bit. So if this is the Chrome of Teams, over here up at the top, you've got this. This is the reload bar, and then next to it, you've got the this new security button, and this is where you grant permission. Like I say, there's not going to be any kind of prompt to give you that in Teams. The Microsoft recommend that you do something like this to put something on the screen to say, "Hey, you got to go and click this button." That is how it works for personal apps. For chat channel and meeting tab apps, then actually it happens here with this drop down, this same app permissions button. Yeah, and just remember, users have to go and select that option themselves. So there is going to be an element of user training here. So you are going to have to kind of figure out and make sure that users know what to do here. Like I said, the application is not going to prompt. Teams is not going to prompt you to do this. All right, so that's kind of a big deal. That's kind of a big one. If you have apps that make device permission calls, then you 100% need to be on top of this and be catering for it either by, training users or making your UI more obvious to users that this thing is happening. All right, let's go to something else. So I said that it was the end of the month, start of a new month, and that means it's time for another What's New in Teams. And we've got one of those for March, and there's a lot in this one. I'm not going to go through it all. I am going to jump to the Power Platform custom development part because these are worth talking through just to make sure we're on top of everything that's been happening this month. I have just talked about this one here. Okay, so as I just described, actually, we will require users to manually opt in for these permissions. So that sort of makes sense. There's a new Zendesk app for Teams. There's some new Power Automate entry points in Teams. Tab actions are moving. So this is more just kind of the Chrome of Teams moving around and stuff. And then this one, which I thought was kind of interesting. So we've heard a lot about Microsoft Teams Connect. And I'm not going to kind of go into loads of detail because lots and lots of other people have talked about Teams Connect and shared channels and how that all works. The bit that is interesting around Teams Connect and shared channels is what that means for applications. So there's a whole bunch of applications that have been written to go into channels that probably haven't been written with the idea of Teams Connect in mind because it didn't exist then. And so what happens to those applications? Should an application be allowed to run in shared channels? And also when it does, how does the application know that it's running in a shared channel space? And how does it know who's in the channel and what permissions does it have across those different organizations? So many questions that need answering. I don't have all of those answers today, and I've not been able to find any documentation really for those answers. I have found, this is in here to say, look, developers will be able to configure their third-party or custom tab apps in the context of shared channels through the Teams SDK. Okay, let's dig into that wording for a second. Let me just blow it up on the screen so you can see it. Where's it gone? I also can't find it. Right. What? I thought it was just there. Oh, here it is, just here. Right. Developers will be able to configure their third-party or custom tab apps. Okay, so interestingly, that sounds like it's coming in the future, and it sounds like it's not something that's here today. So I don't think this is something that happened in March. It's more, we know Teams Connect is happening in March, or it's rolling out now. So heads up, developers are going to be able to do this stuff. I don't know if they can do it today. The other reason for saying that is one of the other links that I'm going to put in the notes today is this one to the roadmap, because there is an item in the roadmap for exactly the same thing with exactly the same wording, actually. Developers will be able to configure their third-party or custom tab apps. This is still marked as rolling out, although it's got a GA date of November 21 and hasn't been updated really since that time, but it is still showing as rolling out. I haven't found any documentation to describe what this means, and I'm unsure whether just the existing technology for channels and for custom tabbed apps, whether that's going to stay and the SDK is going to kind of update to support it, or whether there's going to be new calls that developers will need to make, whether or not existing applications will need to be updated, whether or not existing applications will work out the box, whether or not they will be opt-in to shared channels, or whether there's an ability to opt out, or what that starting point is. I've got lots of questions. I'm still trying to find all the answers. So as soon as I know, I'll let you all know. But yeah, we're kind of trying to find some of that stuff out at the moment. But just be aware that is happening. It's one to watch on the roadmap for sure, and we'll kind of keep an eye on it going into April as well, and it'll kind of become more obvious as well as Teams Connect rolls out in more places. We can actually just try it out and see what the effect is. And then lastly, the last thing I do want to tell you about that is definitely worth your attention happens tomorrow, and it is a Microsoft Tech Day for the Microsoft 365 developer platform. So this is a cool one. So it's not tomorrow. Forget I said tomorrow. It's a month tomorrow. So you've got ages. So don't worry. So don't panic. Don't stop cancelling all the things for tomorrow. This is Thursday, May the 5th. So it's a month away. It's okay. And Vesa Juvonen and Walter Mastercars, senior cloud advocate, and Vesa is a principal PM. Big heavy hitters in the Microsoft 365 developer space. They're always doing the community calls. They put loads and loads into the community. Fantastic kind of resource, fantastic effort, and it's really cool that they do all that for the community. They are running a virtual event. It's going to be 2 hours long. They're going to talk about extending Microsoft 365 with custom applications. So if any of that sounds interesting, you'll definitely want to be there. I don't think it's scoped just to Teams. They're going to cover using Teams apps, absolutely. They're going to cover bots. They're going to cover Viva Connections. They're going to cover Power BI. They're going to cover Microsoft Graph. So it's going to be a really busy 2 hours by the sound of it. Should be really interesting. And also, if you're looking to get certified with MS600, which is the Building Applications and Solutions, then this is a really good start for that, and will get you loads of information you need to get on that journey. So it's free to go, it's free to attend. You do need to register. I'll put a link to the page in the notes, so you can go. There's a register link at the bottom of that blog post. Should be really good. I'm going to be there if I can possibly make it. I think I can. Should be really good. So check that one out for sure. All right. I think that's everything I want to talk to you about this week. Have a great week, whatever it is you're doing, and I will talk to you again next time.